Kroger always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower-than-low prices. And when you download the Kroger app, you can enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. Plus, you can earn fuel points to save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. So it's easy to save big. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Fuel restrictions apply.
We've locked in low prices to help you save big store-wide. Look for the locked in low prices tags and enjoy extra savings throughout the store. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And welcome to a Media Matters Stat Me Up special. So yes, ladies and gents, after the success of part one of our transfer special, and thank you for all your likes, feedback, comments, and all those types of things, part deux, as they'd say in Young Guns, is on now. So this is your time, people. Football hipsters, assemble. It's Stat Me Up, it's transfer special, it's all the stuff you are looking for in this January window. And whilst I'm your host, Dave Davis, as ever, more importantly, I'm delighted to welcome, as ever, Ben Bocksak, ready to run us through his picks, his stats, and his predictions. Ben, how are we?
I'm all good. I'm looking forward to this episode. I'm quite excited to go through these picks and talk about these players. I don't think a lot of them are sort of on topic in the January window, but looking ahead to the summer, I think it's going to be another exciting summer ahead, and there's a lot of exciting names in there that we're going to talk about today.
Which does, to be honest, at the moment with the whole financial fair play, PSR and everything like that, it does feel like that's where everyone's looking to the summer. And naturally, I think there'd be a surprise amongst us all if Liverpool did sign any type of player, to be honest, in January, but you never know. So we're naturally going to look at the second half of the pitch, ladies and gents. If you remember part one, we talked about all the positions across the defensive line, for even the hybrid option. We also finished talking about number 6 as specialist there, when Ben very much poo-pooed ideas of Kamara, but said keep an eye on things like Matt Spiefer and players like that. So in this one, just to give you the sort of agenda, we'll be talking about 6s who can play 8, which was a big focus of the summer, wasn't it, with the players linked. We'll be talking about a Thiago replacement and who could fulfill that, because I think barring a big surprise, the little legend himself is set to depart when his contract expires. We almost feel sick in our mouths saying this, but just in case it does happen, or even if it's a deputy, but Salah deputy, Salah replacements, that person who could play on the right side, that's what we'll be discussing. And we will get Ben to put his neck in the guillotine and be honest, based on what he sees, based on what the stats are telling him, who does he think there will be a focus on bringing to Anfield in the summer? I mean, this position, Ben, the 6 into 8, you know that was what was talked about all summer, wasn't it? The focus at the end before Endo rocks up and Gravenberch very, very late in the window in that regard. Those were the moves made. But this season, Endo sort of had a bit of a run just before he's gone to the Pacific Cup lately, but not much of it. It's been Alexis McAllister, which I think, if everyone's honest, surprised a lot of people at the start of the season, but it's very much been the chat of 6s who can play 8 at the same time. That was what Liverpool were shopping for, courting, if you like, all summer. And the two names that they just kind of, and you know this, Ben, they just come up occasionally, and they were there all summer as well. And it's almost like, I don't know if you're short of column inches, if you just throw their names up, so to speak, or you think it's realistic. We are, of course, talking about Manu Kone, Borussia Mönchengladbach, and Khephren Thuram at Nice. So the two names, the young midfielders that kept coming up and still are there occasionally. I mean, looking at this season, Ben, and how they're getting on, if it is a 6 that can play 8 for Liverpool, do these boys still fit the stats? Do these boys still fit that profile?
I mean, they fit the profile. In some ways, I have a lot of question marks over them as well, particularly Thuram. I got a lot of good feedback from coaches who worked with him at academy level, and I know he covers a lot of ground. So as a number 8, he would be a good fit for Liverpool. But as a holding midfielder, I just don't know if he's tactically disciplined enough. And with Manu Kone, similarly, I think he's always played in a double pivot. Is he ready to play in a single pivot? I'm not 100% certain. I think they're both great players, and I think they both make great decisions going forward. They're sort of very good with their passing. Defensively, though, I think there are question marks. And if you're looking at Liverpool's options at the moment, the likes of Gravenberch and Szoboszlai and McAllister, I think if you're looking at Thuram and Kone, do they add anything extra, anything special? And I think you have to say no. So for me, I think Liverpool have probably moved on from those two and are looking elsewhere if they are looking at that position still.
Interesting, yeah. And Kone's injury histories, particularly when you look at that, is pretty checkered, isn't it? The best you could put it, probably there. I mean, on that basis, if Liverpool are in the market in the summer at all for a 6 or, someone who can play the 6 and the 8, is there anyone kind of profiling for you, or are you thinking stats-wise, you're seeing like, I wouldn't be surprised if Jurgen Klopp, FSG are just watching them at all?
I think Archie Gray, he doesn't necessarily play as a 6, but he is someone who plays as a midfielder, sort of more defensive-minded, good on the ball. I could see him transition into a 6 because he's been playing a lot as right back as well. I think if Liverpool are looking at that sort of profile, the hybrid profile who can play in a number of different positions, I would think Liverpool would be more likely to go for someone a bit younger, someone who's a bit more of a project, because there's already so many ready-made players who can play those roles in the Liverpool squad already. So for me, I think potentially he could be the one. And obviously we'll come to mention a few names, I think, when we're talking about the Thiago replacement, because I think the Thiago replacement could very well be that sort of hybrid profile as well. And I think Morten Freundrup is someone who's been mentioned a lot. He's been doing very well in Serie A. He's a big Liverpool fan, supposedly. There's quotes of him going around saying, it would be a dream for him to join Liverpool. And there's a picture of him with Fernando Torres, Fernando Torres poster, in his childhood home, back when he was a kid. So I think he's one to watch. I think defensively, he's someone who's really good. He ranks in the top 5 for sort of defensive duels and defensive duels won. But for me, I haven't seen much of him on the ball, just because the team he plays for are not particularly great in the Serie A.
Genoa, yeah.
I don't know if it's because, his team doesn't have a lot of the ball, but his sort of passing numbers and those kind of numbers are quite low. And I don't know if it's just because the team that he plays for are not very good, don't keep a lot of possession on the ball, or is it because he's actually not very good on the ball himself? So I think because of that question mark, I think he's still someone who maybe Liverpool might be a little bit hesitant over.
Yeah, I know. When you see his numbers, I mean, the passes per game, it's below a lot of our midfielders. If you look on average, again, there's context, like you say, but even that passing completion number's well below what you're looking for from a Liverpool midfielder. So it's difficult to see that. I mean, the Thiago replacement, because almost as you alluded to there, Ben, I mean, unbelievable player on his day when he's fit, and that's a different topic which we will leave for another day. But when he's fit, that ability to passes between lines, create things, control the tempo, all the characteristics that we know he has, dominate a game. I mean, there's a reason why we pushed the boat out for him and gave him, super high wages. There's no doubts, despite being able to pick him up on a bargain fee that way. maybe it's not an impossible task, but it's difficult. There's even talk, people will see it, maybe the team's moved on. But if Jurgen Klopp or FSG are looking for a Thiago style replacement, is there anyone stats wise we can even get close to or can replicate him in some way that you're identifying?
I think maybe potentially Liverpool could look at internally because Stefan Bajcetic, I think he's sort of a similar profile. Last season, he was very good at controlling games for Liverpool and not just defensively. I know he averaged, I think, the most interceptions per 90 for Liverpool in all competitions last season. But on top of that, I was kind of looking at the stats, and for under 21 midfielders in Europe's top 5 leagues, he actually averaged the most progressive passes per 90 last season. Jude Bellingham was second, so he outperformed Jude Bellingham in that metric with 6.28 progressive passes. And I think just in terms of those sort of stats coming up, he's still very raw, he's still very young. I think he's definitely someone who could be the sort of natural internal replacement for Thiago. And, I don't necessarily see needing to replace Thiago as much of a huge necessity for Liverpool, just because, like you mentioned, he hasn't really been available. So Liverpool have partly sort of moved on from him. That's why I think Bajcetic would be my number one choice. Just, bring him in and really believe in him and sort of promote him into the first team and give him a chance, because I think there's a lot of potential there. And, like we've seen with João Kwanzaa, that can pay off. But if you're really asking me to name a sort of new name, a new target, someone that I really like is Ezequiel Palacios. He plays for Bayer Leverkusen.
Yeah.
And his sort of passing numbers are really good this season. So I think he ranks in second for forward passes out of all midfielders in Europe's top 5 leagues, just behind Toni Kroos. He's averaging 26.76 per 90 this season.
Wow.
Just for comparison, Thiago, who was by far the best in the metric when it comes to Liverpool, was averaging just over 20 forward passes in the Premier League when he has been playing. He's only 25 years old. He's quite young. So I think, if Liverpool really did feel like a need to bring in that kind of midfielder, he could be someone we could be looking at.
So yeah, it's an interesting one. It's like you say, there's Bajcetic to come back. Also, people are going to argue how much you're missing Thiago when you are top of the league as it stands. And I get that. I also get people saying, well, he could just be that extra bit of quality, but we've not seen Alexis McAllister on the left very often, have we, in his natural position or those types of things. So yeah, it will be interesting to see, do they look internally or is it further afield dependent on any midfield additions? So we're going to go to the sexy part of the team now, Ben. People love forwards. People love strikers. They love fast wingers. They love all these types of things. There's no two ways about it. The one thing that none of us like is the fact that Mo Salah's contract is running down. It's likely, you'd suspect, not even going to get talked about to the end of the season just because of everything that's happening, understandably, at the moment. But naturally, it's going to be one of the questions, isn't it, about Liverpool's transfer window. Do we have to look at, is it possibly a Salah replacement? Or we're hoping, probably I think like everyone, Liverpool might well buy the Salah understudy or the eventual replacement, shall we say, if that's the way to phrase it, maybe, that Salah stays and another forward comes in. We're not going to start really talking about too much who's going out at this stage. But it feels like the impossible task in a way, Ben. But you've seen it, I've seen it. These names keep coming up. And the two that I'd probably say, and I know you've clocked it, we see more than ever, are Michael Olise, again, left-footed right winger at Crystal Palace, and Johan Bakayoko, the left-footed right winger, Belgium international at PSV. They are the two names that keep coming up. Now, aside from paper talk and everything like that, Ben, can you make a case for these two based on the stats and everything you're seeing?
I mean, Absolutely. They're both really exciting players. They're the type of players you really enjoy watching. And I think what stands out for both of them is the fact that they tend to thrive in creating chances more than goal scoring, which if you've noticed sort of Salah's performances and over the last 2 seasons, really, he's become more of a creator, you could argue, than a goal scorer. I mean, a lot of the goals that he's scoring, he's getting through set pieces. And actually his sort of creative numbers have really increased. So in that regard, they do seem like a good fit. On top of that, I think what I would add is they both average a lot more dribbles than Salah does. Salah is, I think this season he's around just over 3 per 90, whereas both Bakayoko and Olise are around 9 dribbles per 90, which is
nice.
Almost 3 times as much as Salah, 90 minutes. I think what is a concern, particularly from, I think, Bakayoko's end, is he's only accumulating 0.18 XG per 90, which for an attacker in a really dominant PSV team, a team that you expect to dominate week in, week out, is a really low return. But he does make up for it with the chances he creates. And I think the underlying numbers, the fact that he averages around 5 touches in the opposition's penalty area per 90, it kind of makes up for it. So he's sort of getting in the right places. I don't know why his sort of XG and his finishing isn't quite as high. But the fact that he is getting in the right positions, that's what coaches always say. As long as you get in the right positions, I think the finishing itself and the shots, how and when to take the shots, you can sort of coach, as long as you're in the right areas. So I think it's not a huge concern, but is something to look at when you're sort of deciding how much are they worth, how much are you going to pay for them. I mean, if I had to choose, for me, I think Olise at the moment is probably the one I would favour, just because he's got that Premier League experience. Obviously, he's averaging a lot more XG per 90. I'm really impressed by the fact that, he doesn't just average 90 dribbles per 90. He completes 70% of them, which is the highest, I think, in Europe's top 5 leagues out of anyone who average over 8 dribbles per 90. The fact that he completes 70% is just crazy. If you're looking at the numbers, it's almost unheard of, really. So for that reason, I know Liverpool have been following him for years from his Reading days. I like the fact that also he's got that ability to play in midfield. He's done it before at Reading, where he played as a sort of advanced number 10, and I think in a midfield 3, he could probably do it for Liverpool as well. So, if we're talking about a Salah understudy, he's got that side to him. The fact that he doesn't have to sit on the bench all the time. If Salah is still at the club and still playing, he can come in and play in the middle and potentially in other roles as well. So for me at the moment, he just kind of edges Bakayoko, and I also think
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
People are talking about the price tag, 60 million release clause. It does seem quite high, but if we're looking at the context of things and how much players are valued these days, and I think PSV will probably want in excess of 35 million for Bakayoko, which is again quite a lot for Bakayoko. I think I'd rather pay the extra sort of 25 million for more experience and for someone who's at the moment sort of doing better in a different league as well.
Yeah, it's one of those with Bakayoko. And it's not to sort of denigrate the player in any way, but it's a natural question to ask. It doesn't mean he wouldn't be successful either, but the Eredivisie, players taking that step up, it's a big jump. It doesn't always work in that regard as well. And I know there'll be people who's looking and saying, is Olise's sort of sample size that high as well? There's that element, but that's fair enough. It's Olise over Bakayoko for you, the two that have heard. Even if Mo Salah does stay, which is what let's be clear, Ben, that's what we're all hoping. Would you still be looking, do you think, to bring in Olise? Do you think that'd still be a good move for the club to give him that year, the options that you mentioned? Do you think that would still be good business to get him in at the same time? Yeah,
I mean, I think that's why he sort of makes more sense to me, because if you look at Bakayoko, I think if Salah stays, which I hope he does, and I think he will stay this summer, I don't really see a lot of minutes for Bakayoko because he could play on the left, but there is so much competition on the left as well for Liverpool. And Salah pretty much plays every game when fit, and he is fit pretty much 99% of the time.
Yeah.
The time he doesn't play is when he's away at the African Cup of Nations. So with Bakayoko, if he comes in, it's a really difficult task to get minutes and play games. I think he would be better served, going somewhere else and, bridging that gap between Liverpool and PSV. He's not quite at the stage of Cody Gakpo, who was clearly had overgrown the Eredivisie. He was posting ridiculous and crazy numbers and obviously doing well at the World Cup. He's not quite at that stage yet. Whereas with Olise, he's got the Premier League experience. He probably might be a bit more ready to push Salah a little bit for competition, and at the same time, he's got a bit more versatility about him. He's played in midfield. He could, I think, do a job in midfield. I think he could play in a number of different areas, and I think for that reason, I think I would go for Olise, and I would still go for him this summer as well, because I just think if Liverpool don't go for him, someone else will, like Manchester City and Chelsea, and he will strengthen another team. And I think that will be to the detriment of Liverpool. I really do think he's got sort of one of the highest potentials right now if you're looking at young players in the Premier League. And it would be a huge coup for Liverpool to get him.
Yeah, no one wants the thought of Doku on one side as a young option and Olise on the other, do they? That's feeding Haaland with the others as well. So, yeah, there will be competition for him one way or another. You fully expect him to get his move. I mean, those are the two we're talking about, Ben, because those are the two, let's be honest, in the gossip columns, whatever, that keep coming up, the various reports. Based on the stats, how a Liverpool forward profiles, what we often look for in terms of, like you said, the XG, the touch in the box, all those types of things. Is there any other forwards, be it like a senior, a young forward, anything like that you think these may well be on the club's radar for the summer?
Yeah, there's quite a few actually I had on my list. I mean, Takefusa Kubo, he really stood out to me at the start of the season. He was doing some really good things at Real Sociedad, and this sort of small stature, the way he cuts into his left foot from the right, it gave me real like Mohamed Salah vibes. Some of the goals he scored early on, his numbers sort of dropped off a little bit. Another one I think could be interesting is Brian Mbeumo at Brentford.
Wow.
I think he just really comes across as a sort of typical Liverpool attacker in the sense that, he can play in a number of different positions. Primarily, though, he is left-footed and likes to play on the right wing. He's been posting some really good numbers, really good stats, good underlying stats as well for Brentford. And obviously, his injury came at an unfortunate time.
Yeah.
That kind of complicates things. Is he going to be back to the same level that he was? But if he is, then I think he's someone who Liverpool could look at. I think the major obstacle, though, is the price tag. I think his contract is until 2026, but Brentford have an extension for another year, so it's technically 2027.
Yeah.
I think Thomas Frank said something like 100 million for Ivan Toney. So, Mbeumo is, I think, kind of at the Toney level almost. So I'd expect Brentford would want a pretty sizable fee for him as well. And if we're talking about that, then we're really getting into the sort of Jared Bowen territory, who again, really loves, and I think is a really good player. But West Ham will ask for crazy money, and it's the kind of money that I think isn't necessarily worth it for Liverpool. I think someone else who fits into this category is Mohamed Kudus, who maybe Liverpool should have gone for last summer. Again, he's doing very well at West Ham, dribbling wise, and the sort of energy he provides on the pitch. I think he's really good at pressing and putting in his defensive shift. He's again someone who ticks all the boxes, but I think West Ham will just want way too much money for him.
Crazy.
And I think that kind of rules out Liverpool. But I think as well, I'm quite a big fan of Darwin Núñez on the left wing. And I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool could potentially look at a number 9 as well in the summer. I think what was interesting is there was a press conference before, I think it was the second game against Union SG. So the one that Liverpool played away, and Klopp was asked a question about, Union SG, and he kind of said some interesting forwards left the club recently. And obviously one of those forwards was Victor Boniface, who's doing very well at Bayer Leverkusen.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's unlike Klopp to sort of, he didn't directly name drop him, but the fact that he said some interesting forwards, it kind of reminds you of, when he praised Darwin Núñez before we played Benfica a few seasons ago. And I thought that was interesting. Obviously, Boniface is doing really well at Bayer Leverkusen, and I think he's the kind of forward, if Klopp wanted him and if he liked him, he could do wonders at Liverpool with him. Sort of different profile to Darwin Núñez. I think pressing-wise, there might be a few questions asked, but I don't know. I like him. I think he could be interesting for Liverpool. And I think another one who's kind of going under the radar out of forwards is Evan Nilsson, who at Porto, he's got 20 goal contributions in 22 games, if I remember correctly. And he was one who Liverpool were heavily linked with, both when he's been at Porto, and he was at Fluminense, I think, in Brazil. But even back then, Liverpool's interest goes that far. And now he's posting really good numbers. He's averaging a goal contribution every 67 minutes right now in all competitions for Porto. So, if Liverpool's interest is still there, I think now is the time to get him. He's 24. He's doing some really solid numbers. And obviously the fact that Liverpool have been interested in the past kind of makes him of interest. And then, if you're looking at left wingers, there's today, as we speak, there's a lot of talk about Mamadou Sonko, who I think ticks a lot of boxes for Liverpool. If you're looking at his sort of playing style, he's someone who...
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit libertyshield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Has a good defensive work rate, gets in the box a lot, likes to cut onto his right foot. I think he's done very well in the Europa League. He's only 18 years old. He's already gotten 22 senior goal contributions in Sweden. So not necessarily a high level, but it's still really impressive numbers. And obviously the fact that, similar to Evan Nilsson, he's been on the club's radar for some time because he came on trial when he was just a little kid. I think it was quite a while ago, but he's been on the club's radar for a long time, and there's a lot of interest in him. I know he probably, like, if I were him, the Red Bull project and that model, because they're also interested in him, is a very appealing one as well. But potentially the fact that Liverpool have held this interest for a long time could be in the club's favour. And I think the recent FA rules that they made in the summer, where a Premier League club is allowed up to 4 exemptions for players who don't have to qualify for a work permit, that is in his favour as well, because naturally he obviously wouldn't qualify for that work permit under the previous rules after Brexit. But now he could be one of those players who Liverpool bring in under this exemption, and he could go straight into Liverpool's under-21 side to begin with, but also sort of be a deputy in the first team. I think I said a few podcasts ago that I think he's one to watch. I think he's still maybe one to watch in the window. If Liverpool are going to do any business, I think he's probably the likeliest at this stage, let's be honest, which is maybe not the most exciting one for fans, but it's definitely long term.
And to be fair there, we've given you everything. We've given the senior options. We've given you Premier League stars. We've given you Bundesliga. We've given you number 9s. And it's important to say we've even given, like, say, the youngsters who could be brought into the youth teams, first of all, because it's just, especially with our forwards, it's hard to predict, because they used to almost be that sweet spot, didn't they, Ben? Somewhere between sort of 30 to 50 million, a certain age. They'd come in, they'd be a profile. You knew what to expect. Darwin Núñez and the money, etc., probably blew that out the window, but then you obviously factor in that, hold on, Sadio Mane left at the same time, so the club probably made a big move in that regard. But it is hard to know what they'll do from a forward perspective that way. But speaking of what we think they might do, it is time to stick Ben's neck on the line, because, ladies and gents, in these 2-part specials, we've taken you through the lineup, haven't we? We've taken you through pretty much all 11 positions, bar goalkeeper, I should say, and what they could be looking for, what the options are. Now, we're not going to sort of hold you to this guillotine, Ben, don't get me wrong, but if you did have to predict from what you're seeing, and important because we work on stats, we work on metrics here, but based on what you're seeing, based on what we've looked at, it could be positions. If you want to put players in the mix specifically, that's absolutely fine. But what business do you believe will be a priority for Jurgen Klopp and FSG this summer?
I think, obviously, I want to preface this that I think it all depends on what happens on the outgoings front, because if Saudi Arabia is back again, as unprecedented it was last summer, then I think there could be a few movements on that front. Obviously, Luis Diaz was linked with a move, and I think if those links resurface, then Liverpool could be tempted again to sell him for big money if that is available, if that option is. And then obviously, if Diaz goes, that changes a lot of things in terms of Liverpool's planning or who they bring in. But for me, I think Liverpool will kind of look to bring in a right winger. And I also wouldn't be surprised if, on the attack front, if they sort of considered another number 9 or another potential option, just because Firmino left and he was never directly replaced last summer. And I think Klopp could potentially do with another number 9 just because of Diogo Jota's injury proneness. And I think Gakpo hasn't quite hit the ground running, but I think he has a lot of potential in him. I think he can just sort of he's so good at multiple positions. It doesn't feel like the number 9 spot is the only sort of area where Klopp sees him. So I think maybe having a more specialist in there, a Firmino type almost. I think that's something that Liverpool could look at in the summer. And obviously with Darwin Núñez, like I said, he's been playing left wing quite a lot recently. And I think he's really good in that position. I'm quite a big fan of him in that role. I think it puts sort of less pressure on him to score as well. But, incidentally, he's actually scoring more goals in that role and getting more assists. So it is working in that regard as well. And I think it wouldn't be a bad option to have him playing on the left wing and maybe potentially look at forward. So I think there could be some surprises on the way. Obviously, it's very early days. We're still in January, and I think a lot will depend on injuries as well. But those are the two kind of positions if we're talking about, from number 8 upwards, that I think Liverpool could look at primarily is a number 9 and definitely a right winger. That's definitely, I think, number 1 priority at this stage.
Interesting. So just for anyone's wondering, hold on, why didn't you talk about the defenders or why didn't you talk about the sixers? We did talk about that on last pod, to be fair. So we did ask Ben to predict. So it was very much a focus on that regard, higher up the pitch, the 6 into the 8s, we said, and anywhere across that sort of forward line, which is what a lot of the rumours seem to be looking at specifically. I didn't sort of plan on asking you this, but we've talked about a lot, Ben. We've talked about players, we've talked about profiles. Is there anyone else you just think we've not mentioned that could be on the Reds' radar? Or do you think the targets are now probably already locked in, so to speak? They've got a fair idea, or could there be any sort of surprises, do you think, or players we've not mentioned at all?
Not from the data that I looked at. I mean, I mentioned quite a lot of names who maybe haven't been directly linked. So obviously, I think Kubo is quite interesting because his pressing numbers are really good as well. He does a lot. But then again, there are still sort of question marks about his finishing, his output. He's not quite averaging as much recently. So I think in that regard, I'm not 100% sold on him. But I think other than the names I mentioned, I can't quite, I couldn't anyway, in the data that I was looking at, find anyone who could be on Liverpool's radar. I think there's definitely a lot more left wingers who fit the bill, but there's already too many left wingers at Liverpool. So the right winger position is a really tough one because, I mean, if you want like a like-for-like replacement, the closest you're probably going to get in terms of numbers and data is Bukayo Saka, but there's no way that Liverpool can get Saka. He'd cost way too much money, and I think he's a fantastic player. He would be the perfect Salah replacement, don't get me wrong, but it'd just be impossible to pull off. So maybe that's a name that I didn't mention because I just don't think it's realistic. But if you're looking at the data, his numbers in terms of touches in the box, XG, dribbles per 90, everything really, he fits that profile. He's almost a Salah regen, and he's still very young, so he could definitely. I don't think he's close to hitting Salah's levels yet, but he can definitely hit Salah's levels in the future if he can fulfill his potential at Arsenal. But I think, unfortunately for Liverpool, there's just no way that Liverpool can get him.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. And probably the key point that you make, I think, and as we pick this up again later, sort of towards the summer, as we get into those months, it probably largely depends on who wants to go. Like you said, does the Saudi paradigm come back in? What does Mo Salah, I mean, those contract negotiations are going to be crucial, aren't they? What does he want to do? And how does that work? And probably everything else will just flow from there. realistically. So, ladies and gents, we gave you part one. We talked about the back end of the pitch, and we have more than given you part two. We have talked about all the forward positions, everything past the six, all the options from superstars to youngsters, and what we even think could be happening. So, time will tell on this one. We'll have to see, and it's definitely one we're all going to be keeping an eye on. Not expecting much to happen this window particularly, but we will have to see in the summer, won't we? So all it leaves me to say for the final thing as ever is, Ben, thank you for your time, your insight and your analysis. It's much appreciated as ever.
It's been a pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Good stuff. And ladies and gents, that was Stat Me Up Transfer Special Part 2.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.